I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. And this is Currents. 10 years after his death, a tribute to the life and legacy of Cardinal OConnor.
When you were with him, you felt like you were the only person in the world.
Is a call to prayer unconstitutional? We'll find out.
Take a look at George Washington's farewell address to the nation. It's laden with religious language and in fact, an encouragement of a religious spirit.
And a big celebration for sisters in Brooklyn and Queens.
Well, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. For 16 years, he was a towering figure in New York City and in the American church. And now, a decade after his death, Cardinal John O'Connor continues to cast a long shadow and have a lasting impact.
Very true. And on Monday, exactly 10 years after he died, the Archdiocese held a tribute to the Cardinal at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
What a tribute on this 10th anniversary of his passing to life eternal. What a tribute to see so many of you, a crowd like this. I think if he were here, he'd say, this is a two-collection crowd. So.
Before the Mass, a panel of loved ones and admirers was present to share their experiences of John Cardinal O'Connor and his legacy, including his successor, Cardinal Egan.
I know no bishop, archbishop or cardinal, who loved, revered, and obeyed the successor of Peter like John Cardinal O'Connor.
Also on hand, the Sisters of Life, an order established by Cardinal O'Connor in 1991, which was consecrated for the protection and enhancement of every human life.
He really prayed for an answer to what was missing in the pro-life movement.
He is the basis for our longevity and even for the dignity of the pro-life movement today.
It seems so absurd that we should have to be fighting to save human life.
His dedication to this cause defined him in part, and the sisters point out he was more than just their founder.
There was a great paternity, a great spiritual paternity, and a great warmth between the sisters and Cardinal O'Connor.
We all had a chance to sit and talk with him personally, one-on-one. And I remember I overslept and missed my meeting with Cardinal O'Connor, which everybody was aghast because, you know, you don't miss the meeting with the Cardinal. So when I went in to finally meet with him, I was so apologetic, and I'll never forget how at ease he made me feel. It was so easy to share everything with him, and I did, surprisingly.
His influence was also felt outside the church, as former New York Mayor Ed Koch testified.
He said something to me that I've always remembered and that you will enjoy. He said to me, "The church is not a salad bar. You don't pick and choose. It is the faith."
But what was echoed time and time again in both the panel discussion and Archbishop Timothy Dolan's homily was Cardinal O'Connor's respect and love for the individual.
I hear Cardinal O'Connor stories everywhere. Cab drivers, policemen, waiters, ushers at the ballpark.
He cared for the human person in front of him, and when you were with him, you felt like you were the only person in the world, and that is an amazing gift. That's an amazing gift.
And he only had three words of advice to a priest. And the 3 words of advice were these: be kind to the people, be kind to the people, be kind to the people.
Well, a little more than a month ago, we covered another conference about him at St. Joseph's Seminary in Yonkers. And you can actually see that report on our website. Just go over to currentsny.net.
And stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including an abortion law in one state gets put on hold. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, celebrating sisters in the Brooklyn Diocese.
But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. We told you yesterday about the oil spill off the Gulf Coast and what the church is doing to help people affected by it. Well, about 600 miles north of the coastline, massive flooding has killed 29 people and forced countless others from their homes. Heavy rains swamped the city of Nashville, Tennessee, and surrounding areas last weekend. A spokesman for the Diocese of Nashville says church buildings and Catholic schools only suffered minor damage, but many parishioners' homes were damaged or destroyed. The good news, as Martin Savage reports, the Cumberland River that submerged much of the historic downtown Nashville area is receding.
Nashville residents say there was almost no time to prepare for the deadly deluge.
I've been down here 40 years, never saw it like this.
Since the weekend, a small navy of emergency responders and volunteers have ferried stunned survivors to safety.
Almost kind of gives you reminiscent of Katrina or something like that. And you think, well, it can't happen here. Well, it has.
It happened because a record 13 inches of rain fell on the city in just 2 days. The Cumberland River and other waterways rose faster than most people could imagine, trapping even a local pastor Sunday morning.
We were getting ready for church, to go to church, and by the time we got out, the water had risen to our porch. The neighbors actually had to form a chain because the current was coming through each house.
If the images on the ground were frightening, from the air, they were staggering. Murky brown water rose to rooftops and lapped around high-rises. It even threatened LP Field, home to the NFL Tennessee Titans. The Cumberland River has risen above 50 feet. The last time that happened was in the 1960s. Nashville's mayor and Tennessee's governor flew over the flooding and seemed taken aback.
Right here in Nashville, it's an astonishing sight for someone who has lived here a long time.
The water has submerged one of the city's 2 water treatment plants, cut power to more than 14,000 residents, even shut down the city's bus service. And then there are those with no place to go.
We still have about 30 shelters open across the state with a little over 1,000, about 1,100 people in the shelters. 5 other shelters are on standby.
All eyes were on Nashville's music icons. There's water in the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Grand Ole Opry. 1,500 guests at the famed Opryland Hotel were forced to evacuate and spend the night in the nearby high school, while 2 of the hotel's atriums can now boast an unwanted feature: indoor lakes.
Well, that is Martin Savage reporting. The Diocese of Nashville spokesman says that leaders are trying to mobilize relief efforts, but communication is difficult right now. Here in New York, the city has cut ties with a Catholic agency that provides children with foster homes. The New York Times reports city officials would not reveal why they cut ties with Little Flower Children and Family Services, but the group was one of the lowest rated agencies in a 2005 Children's Services review. The group's executive director says Little Flower will fight that decision. No sooner did St. Vincent's Hospital close its doors, word comes that another hospital is picking up one of its services. Beth Israel will take over St. Vincent's Comprehensive Cancer Center. In a statement, Beth Israel said it will be one of the largest and most comprehensive multi-site cancer programs in the Northeast. And a new law in Oklahoma requiring women to undergo an ultrasound before an abortion has been put on hold. The bill became law last week, but 2 abortion providers filed a lawsuit to block it. A U.S. district judge put a 45-day hold on the legislation pending the outcome of the suit. The law also requires doctors to give expectant mothers a detailed explanation of the ultrasound images before an abortion can be performed. Supporters say the law is intended to reduce the number of abortions in Oklahoma, but opponents say it goes too far and violates women's privacy.
Most practicing Catholics are unfazed by the sex abuse crisis. That, according to a New York Times and CBS News poll. The survey found that 77% of Catholics who attend Mass at least once a week feel the Vatican's handling of recent sex abuse reports has not affected the way they feel about the Catholic Church. And that poll also shows that 88% of all Catholics, those who attend Mass regularly or not so regularly, say that the scandal has had no effect on their dealings with priests. At his weekly general audience today, Pope Benedict spoke out in favor of a worldwide ban on nuclear weapons. Get more on that story now from Rome Reports.
Benedict XVI talked about the review conference on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which began in New York on May 3rd. The Pope said peace rests on trust and on respect, not on the balance of power.
Esorto infine tutti I partecipanti alla riunione di New York a superare I condizionamenti della storia e a tessere pazientemente la trama politica ed economica della pace per aiutare lo sviluppo umano integrale e l'autentica aspirazione dei popoli.
During the general audience, the Pope also made reference to priests before the upcoming end of year for priests. Benedict XVI said priests should help Catholics live the liturgy fully.
In the celebration of the sacraments, priests sanctify the faithful and are themselves sanctified and configured ever more closely to Christ.
The Pope also asked the 15,000 people gathered at St. Peter's Square to pray for priests.
Et Spiritus Sanctus.
Tuesday, the Pope condemned a recent bombing which targeted Christian students in Mosul, Iraq. 4 people were killed, more than 100 hurt in the Sunday blast. Thousands of protesters took to the streets in a northern Iraqi city this week to protest that same attack. Reports say as many as 3,000 Christians gathered to call on the Iraqi government to help their community. More than a dozen Christians have died there in violent attacks so far this year. And finally, legendary New York columnist Bill Reel has died. Reel worked for the New York Daily News for 38 years, penning his Real People column for much of that time. Later, he worked for The Tablet, the newspaper here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. He retired from writing his weekly Tablet column back in 2007. Reel died from cancer on Monday. He was 71 years old. Stay tuned. There's much more currents coming up straight ahead. Just ahead, is this another battle in the culture wars? We'll discuss the National Day of Prayer.
There's no question that our nation was founded on religious principles, specifically Judeo-Christian principles.
Welcome back. Well, tomorrow is the 59th annual National Day of Prayer. President Obama has issued a proclamation to mark the occasion, but not everyone is on board. Just last week, a federal judge declared the day unconstitutional, saying that the day violates the separation of church and state. The ruling is being appealed, and the day will go on as planned tomorrow. For a closer look at this and some of the issues involved, we're joined now in studio by a familiar face here on Currents, Monsignor Kieran Harrington. He's the Vicar for Communications and the Director of Government Affairs here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Monsignor, thank you so much for being here, joining us today.
It's good to be with you, man.
Well, the judge in her ruling, I'm just going to read a little bit of this here, U.S. District Court Judge Barbara Crabb ruled that the law specifying the National Day of Prayer, she said it, quote, goes beyond mere acknowledgement of religion because its sole purpose is to encourage all citizens to engage in prayer, an inherently religious exercise that serves no secular function in this context. What would you say to that? What would your response to that statement be?
Well, I think that the judge ought to take her decision to its logical conclusion. And I think that the judge should rule that Christmas is unconstitutional as a day off for federal employees. And I think that we'd get quite a reaction from the people all across our country if the courts ever decided to rule that giving Christmas as a holiday was unconstitutional. The fact of the matter is that you have a secular elite who is making a decision that the National Day of Prayer is unconstitutional, when in fact the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives have paid federal employees who are chaplains. The fact of the matter is you take a look at the history of our country. You take a look at George Washington's farewell address to the nation. It's laden with religious language and in fact an encouragement of a religious spirit. So I would say to those who are aggressive secularists, that I share their goal to ensure that everyone has the free exercise of religion. At the same time, there is no question that our nation was founded on religious principles, specifically Judeo-Christian principles. And you just have to take a look at the writings of the founders of our nation. You have to take a look at the actions, the early actions of our country, which actually published. I mean, people are not aware of this. That the Congress actually published a Bible, published by the Congress of the United States. So it seems to me that there's a long history of the government of the United States being supportive of religious practice.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, our founding documents, of course, mention God in you know, several places. So there you go. I mean, from the founding of the country, religion has been a part of it. And is that the issue here? I mean, because the Constitution specifically says that Congress shall make no law, you know, which establishes a religion as, you know, say the official religion of the state, or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. I mean, is that what we're dealing with here? The difference between that, making an official religion or something like that, and just saying, hey, we encourage you to pray.
Well, here's the thing, is that it's important. I think the religious underpinnings of our nation are really significant. Here's the reason, Matt, is where are our rights derived? Where are our rights derived? Are they derived from man? Does man give you your right to freedom of expression? Does man give you your right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? No, that's not man. We're saying that we're endowed by our Creator, that some power greater than man. And the reason why that is significant is because when the time of our nation's foundation, a lot of governments man derived his rights from the power of the sovereign, from the monarch. Right. Not in the United States. We don't derive it from other men or from the government. We derive our rights solely from God. And that's the great contribution that we've made, that's the great contribution of the American experiment.
Right, and the interpretation of the Constitution and the concept of the separation of church and state, of course, has been you know, something that's caused a lot of controversy over the years. I mean, this isn't the first time something like this has come up, obviously. Where does the church stand on that concept, separation of church and state? And where is the line drawn between, you know, that concept and, you know, those two being separate and on one end and a theocracy on the other?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's important to note that in the United States, I mean, we are wholehearted proponents of the separation of church and state. The reason for that is because, I mean, Thomas Jefferson's notion was to ensure that no one's right was infringed. In other words, that a religion was not imposed upon me. That's significant. But the other thing is which is equally significant, is that the government didn't infringe on the rights of religion. This is very significant because very often, especially at the time the Constitution was written, that's exactly what was happening. The rights of people who were religious were being infringed. And of course we know the history of our nation is the Pilgrims were fleeing religious oppression. But interestingly enough to note is that even at the time of our nation's founding, the states, not the federal government, but the states actually had established religion. And so it's important to note that that the religious roots of our nation are clearly evident. All the Ivy League colleges basically were founded as schools of theology. Certainly those, this is not denying the fact that there were deists in the government, but there was clearly a religious underpinning, a religious worldview that formed our nation. And at the same time, what was so revolutionary was to say that it's important for us to have a religious worldview, just not what that worldview ought to be.
Monsignor Kieran Harrington, thank you so much for being here. Our time has come and gone, but we always thank you for being here, sir. Thanks so much. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When we return, you won't see a party like this every day, as some local sisters look back.
I look around and I say, have I really been here 50 years? Yes, indeed.
Finally tonight, here's a different kind of sister act, one of Thanksgiving and celebration. It happened Monday night out in Douglaston, where dozens of sisters from different religious orders gathered to all mark their anniversaries.
That's right, our cameras were there to capture some of the fun and also to hear some of the thoughts of those who were there.
Today, we are the witnesses of Christ's death and resurrection, a bridge to God. That's the reason for consecrated life. You have shown the way to the Father to countless individuals because first you have known the Lord yourself. You truly, by your consecration, by your faithful lives, have witnessed to the reality of God's love. The role of women religious in the whole Church of the United States has been a critical one. We would not be what we are today without them. And certainly in our own diocese, we have witnessed their contribution, which has been tremendous. And they can still continue to witness and still continue to contribute in many, many ways. there are actually hundreds of women religious still working in the diocese.
The institutions of education, healthcare, social service began with the women religious, trekking across the country with $5 in their pockets or nothing, 2 or 3 people, and they just did what they needed to do.
What a blessing it is to be called by God, and the graces, the blessings, the many things that you received. It's a great day. In so many ways it seems like yesterday, and then I look around and I say, have I really been here 50 years? Yes, indeed.
I've been in education all my life, so I love my ministry. I love working with children and just thinking of the impact that you have on the lives of so many young individuals. It's a blessing. I thank God every day for my vocation.
It's an important witness in a world when commitments are not long-standing, particularly as a testament to service to God, service to community in different places. I know that they do wonderful work in every different area from when they began. It's just a wonderful opportunity to show some appreciation.
When I was in 50 years, I was 70 years old and shocked. Now I'm in 60 years, so you know how old I am now. But I'm lucky. I'm lucky I'm here, and a lot of people can't be, and so I'm grateful.
It's hard to believe that I'm this age and have done so well, thank God, health-wise and in every way. I love teaching, and when I was in high school, I loved Latin, and I became a Latin teacher, luckily. So I enjoyed what I was doing.
And the future?
Who knows? Heaven, I hope.
I love it.
Who knows?
Yeah, I know. That's just so inspiring, though, to see those people. I mean, like the woman who has been a nun for 75 years. 75 years. And then the other sister who's been a sister for 60 years, and she's 80 years old and does not look it at all.
No.
They're doing something right, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that it was said in the piece, when they really love their vocation, it's not work, you know, it's doing what you love to do, and I think that's part of what keeps you young, and it's part of what keeps you in such service and continuing to go forward and do the kind of work that you need to do.
I know, and you know, and they can let loose and have a little fun there too.
I
You
know,
saw them dancing a little bit.
I like that.
I love it.
Dancing nuns.
I was telling our news director, anytime I see a nun dancing, I am happy.
I know.
Because things are good. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you see all different nuns from all different kinds of orders and walks, and it's just a great thing to see.
Real dedication. Well, that is it for tonight. Tomorrow, dating and relationships from a Catholic perspective. You won't want to miss that and what our experts have to say. Meantime, remember, we are always online at currentsny.net, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can also become our fan on Facebook.
Until next time, I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great night.